Hi, I'm Beth. I'm a ceramic artist and I'm about to graduate from the Royal College of Art here in London. I recently got to finish a project that I'm really excited about. It was a really fun research exploration into some local folklore. So I wanted to come on here and tell y'all a little bit about it. It was actually in response to a prize competition put forth by the Worshipful company of tin plate workers, and the premise of the project was just tin. We could react to that in any way we wanted, whether it was by using tin in our projects or by creating a project about the idea of tin or a historical use of tin or anything we wanted, really. So I am a collector of stories. I am obsessed with folklore, mythology, fantasy, and fairy tales. So when I heard about this project, it really made me want to look into some of the folklore surrounding tin. And that led me actually to the tin mines of Cornwall. So for a little bit of history, the Cornish tin mines were some of the most prolific and important mines in the UK and arguably in the world. They produced so much tin and copper, especially during the 18th, 19th, and 20th centuries, and they really fed the Industrial Revolution. The Cornish miners are also some of the most famous miners because they were incredibly skilled and they had so many mining innovations. However, regardless of human innovation, the fact of the matter is that there is a lot of danger and mystery so far beneath the Earth's surface. And that's where the knockers come in. These little creatures fall into a vague category of fey creatures. So they were said to be about 2 feet tall with white whiskers, and they were, of course, known for their knocking on the walls of the mines. When I heard their name, it struck a real note of familiarity with me because I am from the Rust Belt in the United States. I'm from Western Pennsylvania, and I'm from a town that's known for manufacturing but was surrounded by a lot of mining activity. And so I had heard of creatures called Tommyknockers. And I had heard of some of the other folklore around these creatures, like not whistling in the mines. As I kept looking into the Cornish knockers, I realized the folklore was essentially the same, with just the name being changed. And it turns out that Cornish miners were the ones who brought that tradition over. It's really interesting to me that it came over so intact, but we'll talk about that in just a little bit. So the knockers themselves were a bit of a mischievous presence in the mines. They were known to snuff out stray lights or to perhaps steal or misplace tools that miners had set to the side. However, as they became fonder of the miners and as the miners got to know them, there became this back and forth where the knockers would lead miners to rich veins of ore or away from impending mine collapses. And in return, the miners would do things like leaving them a bit of their lunch, which was often Cornish pasties. And so the miners actually started bringing pasties with their initials on the top, not just to designate it as their lunch, but so that if they did leave some of that for the knockers would know who was feeding them. It became this very interesting back and forth, and actually mines that had knockers in them were known to be far safer and far preferable to work in. And that is something that traveled in its entirety almost to the United States. I truly believe that a lot of the way that this folklore traveled was probably because of the Celtic oral storytelling tradition within Cornwall. They had something called droll tellers, which is very specific to the area, and I have to admit this isn't something I'm super familiar with. I need to do a little bit more research into the intricacies of what exactly it was and perhaps see if I can find anyone who still engages in the tradition. But I do really believe that this oral storytelling tradition is how that piece of folklore traveled intact across the ocean, because that is something that you very rarely find, specifically with creature folklore. Other little traditions, of course, travel with the people, but when it comes to creatures, they do tend to be a little bit place specific. But knockers, which became Tommyknockers in the US, are just omnipresent in the region. It's really interesting. But yeah, so that's a little bit of the history of what what the research was for this project. I got really interested and I ended up making 2 responses to it. We did have a little bit of limited time. I believe all told we had less than a month. And if you're familiar with ceramics, you know everything needs to be built, it has to dry, it has to go through an initial firing, and then a glaze firing. So it's a little bit of a time-intensive process, but I did end up getting both pieces that I wanted made, and I will show you them now. For my first response, I wanted to create something that was a little bit more simple, not necessarily a full figure. So I just created a knocking hand. You can see I sculpted it out of porcelain, and then it was solid built. I hollowed it out. I made sure that it has a little notch there so you can hang it on a wall. And then I used a black underglaze to highlight some of these skin textures that I put in here. And then on the knuckles, I put a palladium glaze. And I just wanted it to look sort of like molten metal dripping off the knuckles as it was knocking. So that was kind of the idea behind this one. Once I created this though, I realized that I really wasn't going to be able to get away from this project without creating a full figure. So that was my next response. Here he is. I had so much fun making this little guy. Again, I was a little tight on time, so it's not as accurate as I would like with the garb. But I gave him the little white beard. He's made of a grogged earthenware. And then I used a porcelain slip to color his beard white. His little miner's hat does come off. And you can see he has one boot on, but he is missing the other one. So this is what I ended up with for the second part of my response. I had so much fun with the research for this project. I feel like there's still so much left for me to research. It's kind of like falling into a rabbit hole, so I think that's what I'll be doing for the next few weeks. But yeah, I just wanted to share the project, the research, and what came of it. So I'm probably going to be sharing some detail photos a little bit later on this channel. But yeah, oh, he ended up winning 3rd place in the prize competition, so I was very excited about that. Thank you guys so much for sticking with me throughout this, and I will see you next time.